Once again, it's on. You know what time it is. It's time to play some toss. Welcome, everyone, to episode 64 of the Tristain on Sports Show Toss. It is your main man, T-Squared, Tristain Thomas. Thank you so very much for joining us this week. What do we got going down? We got to talk about the Milwaukee Bucks. 4-3, finally over 500. What am I seeing so far in this very, very early season? The Green Bay Packers took care of business, and now the big business is about to begin. We'll discuss. And then the toss sweep is all NFL because playoff time is here. We got to talk about Super Wildcard Weekend predictions. That's right, predictions for your main man. But you all know how we get started here on on toss. We start with State of the State, and let's talk about the Green Bay Packers. You know what? Let's talk about the Milwaukee Bucks. Let's start off with them first. Since the rest of the show is going to be NFL heavy, let's talk about the very early season Milwaukee Bucks. As I mentioned when I was explaining to you all what's going down this week on toss, 4-3 after they destroyed the Detroit Pistons 125-115 Monday night. Giannis goes off for 43 points. This team seems to be coming together. Now, these are the Pistons. I believe they're 1-6. They didn't have Blake Griffin. They didn't have some players. They're not all together yet. It's still very early. You kind of have to take these wins and losses with a grain of salt with everyone. We've seen teams lose by 50 plus. We've seen some not so inspiring performances from teams. But you have to understand, teams are still trying to play themselves into shape. You're essentially having to go through preseason during regular season. So you're really playing preseason basketball during the regular season. So teams are still rounding themselves into shape. As I said last week, it's impossible at this point of the season for anyone to have a verdict on what this team is going to be. Okay? Finally over 500 for the first time all season, 4-3. They'd be in the playoffs if they started today, but they don't. Still got a long way before that happens. But as I said, Giannis went off, and he's had a good stretch of games, but he's had a few games where he really didn't need to be effective, and the Bucks have won, and sometimes he wasn't that effective, and the Bucks lost. This team is still really rallying themselves into shape. You still have guys who are still learning how to play with each other, but you can see where the dividends will pay off. I called the Jrue Holiday trade the most significant move that the Bucks have made. And it's not because Bogdanovich, that trade completely collapsed, and that was all the NBA and other NBA teams is doing. Article came out today that Bogdanovich even said himself, "Oh, well, I didn't speak to the Bucks." No, that doesn't mean that didn't speak to his agent, but I digress. They took a second rounder from them for nothing. But again, I digress. It's not because that trade fell through. Even if that trade had gone through, it would have been a great piece. But you're talking about Jrue Holiday, one of the more underrated players in all of the NBA. He gets it done on both ends of the court. He's very, very smart, very, very crafty, very, very strong, great defender, good offensive player, can shoot a bit better than Bledsoe. And let's get on this thing about the comparisons between Bledsoe and Holiday. Some people out there are kind of reflecting on the type of player that Eric Bledsoe was during his time in Milwaukee. I will say this bluntly. He was good. He just wasn't playoff good. He was regular season good, but in the playoffs, it just did not work. And that is what this team is going to be judged by. As long as you have Giannis in tow, you're going to be judged by what you do in the playoffs if you're the Milwaukee Bucks. The casual, the general NBA fan, most national NBA analysts, they don't really care what the Bucks are doing in the regular season. They'll talk about it. But even a lot of them have said the same thing. They get judged by what happens in the postseason. And what happened with Eric Bledsoe in the postseason was he shrank. He shrank. The basketball IQ in those moments just wasn't there from a shot selection standpoint, from a passing standpoint. Just wasn't there. You gave it time. You gave it multiple playoff appearances. And it's not to say that he was just a complete disaster in the playoffs. He wasn't a complete disaster, but he wasn't what you needed to get over the hump. Your expectation is to be playing in the NBA Finals and winning an NBA championship. He's part of that reason why you didn't get there. He just plain and simply did not give you enough. So I love Eric Bledsoe. It just did not work in the playoffs. But I will root for his success everywhere else. Just not when it comes to him coming up against Milwaukee and his team. I want them to lose every time. I want the Pelicans to lose every single time they come up against the Milwaukee Bucks. Make that clear. But I will be rooting for his success because he was not a garbage player. He was not a terrible player. It just didn't work in the playoffs, and that's what it is. So let's not drag his name through the mud. Let's not sit here and poo-poo on what he gave this franchise. He was a very good player. He fit the role that you needed in the regular season. You wish he would have given you more postseason. He did not. That is why you made the move to go and get Drew Holiday. And you're seeing that. He's getting more comfortable. They're communicating a little bit more on defense. A higher basketball IQ on offense. He can make various passes. He could go right or left hand. He could take you off the dribble. He can shoot the three at a higher percentage. Much better shooter than Bledsoe. And Bledsoe was strong, but so was Holiday. This guy gives you a bit more dimensions than what than what Bledsoe did, and that's what you're looking for. But will he bring that to the table come postseason? You got to qualify first. And at this point, you're only 7 games into the season. But you like what you're seeing. You like the communication that's beginning to happen. You like what you've seen from his offensive game. How he opens things up for others. He's starting to build that chemistry with Giannis, which is exactly what you want. It's beginning to come together. Chris Middleton continuing to be as consistent and of an all-star as you can get. A quiet all-star. People are still poo-pooing what he brings to the table. People are still poo-pooing the type of player that he's built himself into being. But it has not stopped him any. Has not stopped him any. He continues to go out there and play at a very, very high level on both ends of the court. You like what you've seen from the rookies? Sam Merrill, Jordan Nwora. Both of those guys can absolutely shoot, and you hope that Budenholzer gets them more time on the court and not in garbage time minutes. Sam Merrill dealing with an ankle injury. He missed the game. He might miss the next game against, guess who? Detroit on Wednesday. Both games at Fiserv Forum, a home-and-home series, with both home games being in Milwaukee. Kind of that funny scheduling deal that the NBA put together to limit travel and try to prevent this COVID thing from spreading throughout the NBA, even though they're starting to have trouble with that now. Kevin Durant missing games. He was in close contact. You had some other players who tested positive. You just hope this doesn't blow up the same way that it has in the NFL. But guys are still learning each other. Guys are still learning the systems. You know, a guy like Brent Forbes, who's shooting the lights out from 3. This is what you brought him here for. I already mentioned Nwora. I already mentioned Merrill. They'll be judged by what happens in the playoffs. Can you make higher than a 32% from 3 come playoff time? Because that's really the only reason the Wall has been effective in the playoffs against the Bucks. is because the guys who are wide open when Giannis sucks in that defense in the lane and the wall is there, they have not been able to be clutch and make those baskets. The same baskets they've been able to make in the regular season. Now, to this point, they're near the top of the league in scoring. I believe they actually lead the league in scoring, same as they did last season. Defensive numbers have slipped a little bit, but I think those will come back up when the guys learn the systems and they learn each other and they start communicating a little bit more, which we've been seeing. I think they'll be top 5 offensively and defensively again, which would be the 3rd straight year. But to this point, through 7 games, I mean, folks, you still got to be patient. It's only been 7 games. They're over 500. Maybe they'll start on that run where they start to separate themselves. But again, it's only been 7 games. Haven't even hit double digits yet. This team is still trying to figure out who they are with the new pieces. They're still trying to figure out each other, get into that groove, get into that flow. And I know this is a world of instantaneous, I want it now type of attitude, but you can't have that with everything. I'm sure the Bucks want to play well right off the bat. I'm sure they want everything to be a well-oiled machine as we've been accustomed to seeing them the last couple of seasons. But when you have a roster turnover like this, a short off season, a short training camp, and a short preseason, that's just not realistic. Some of these teams who are playing over their heads, and we'll talk more about them next week, they're going to come back down to earth. It's exactly as I said last week. 25 to 30 games is typically when I'm able to sit there and tell you, okay, this team is this team is that. And we're not even close to that yet. So exercise patience with every team. Doesn't matter what team you root for, but since we are a Wisconsin-based show with an eye on the nation, we talk about them all, but we're talking about the Bucks. You got to use patience. You got to use patience. Again, they face the Pistons on Wednesday night as we record this program on a Tuesday for a Wednesday premiere. Another home game at the Fiserv Forum, hoping to go to 2 games over 500. But you have to absolutely like what you see from them coming together. I think they're starting to get it, but we need more time. They need more time. We need more time. We need to see how they get it and when it will click. And I think that's going to happen very, very soon. But again, it's only been 7 games. Patience. Continuing on toss here, state of the state. Now let's get to the Green Bay Packers. Let's talk about how it was high-stakes football all over the place, but also in Chicago at Soldier Field, oldest rivalry in the game, Packers-Bears. Bears needed to win their ball game to make it into the playoffs. That's how they controlled their own destiny. Otherwise, they had to wait for the Cardinals to lose, which the Cardinals did end up losing. So the Bears had to secure the playoff spot no matter what. But the Packers absolutely needed a win. They controlled their destiny to get the number 1 seed, first round bye, the only first round bye in the NFC, and home field advantage, meaning that all those playoff games, all those playoff teams would have to come up to Green Bay, Wisconsin, technically Eschwaubenon, but Green Bay, Wisconsin on 1265 Lombardi Avenue and play at Lambeau Field and try to put the number 1 seed, Green Bay Packers, out, because the Packers did win. The Packers did win 35-16. They secured that number 1 seed. They secured that first round bye. They secured home field advantage. It is another big step, another piece of business the Packers wanted to handle. They wanted that number 1 seed, but first it started with winning games. And then then the next step was to win the division. They did that. Once you secure that division and 1 home game, Why we want to play on Wildcard Weekend? Why don't we try to go for a first round bye and not come back until the divisional round? And that's exactly what they did. They seized control of their destiny. They secured that number one seed, their first round bye, home field advantage. Aaron Rodgers has talked about it, all of his NFC championship games that he's started, because he was a part of that one back in 2007 up against the Giants. That was also at Lambeau Field. Brett Favre threw the pick in overtime, and Giants went down the field, kicked the field goal in overtime, one of the coldest games at Lambeau ever. Giants won that ball game, became NFC champions, went to the Super Bowl, defeated the undefeated Patriots in that Super Bowl. But in all the NFC championship games that Aaron Rodgers has been the starter, they've all been on the road. They have all been on the road. You talk about Chicago. You talk about Seattle. You're talking about Atlanta. And you talk about just last season, San Francisco. All of those games have been on the road. He has never, ever had an opportunity as the starter for the Green Bay Packers to try and win an NFC championship, secure a Super Bowl berth at home on the frozen tundra that is Lambeau Field. He's never had that opportunity. And you could tell because he brought it up multiple times during the season. He wants that. He wanted that. He's salivating for that. And with the team that's playing like this, playing and winning in different situations, and they showed this propensity last season as well. They just found a way to win when the offense really wasn't clicking. Because let's be clear, the offense last year, you could tell that there were some good elements to it, but it was brand new. And even for a veteran Hall of Famer like Aaron Rodgers, it takes a little bit to learn something new when you've been in a system for well over a decade. Takes a little bit to learn it. Takes a little bit to buy in. Takes a little bit to learn the intricacies and to feel comfortable with it and to make it your own. So they had to scrounge and scrap and scrape for points last season. But the defense was good. And they were able to win. They won 13 games last season. This year, number one scoring offense, over 31 points a game. It was 31.6, I believe. But it was over 31 points a game. Number one scoring offense in all of the NFL. You were not hurting for points. Now, there were some games where you kind of did, and you were kind of inconsistent. You didn't play a 4-quarter game. Some of that you have to give credit to the opposing defense, but some of it you were missing. You just, whatever the case was. But for the most part, you were an automatic 30-plus. That was the case in this game, 35-16. Now, give credit to the Bears. The Bears came in with a very good game plan, as I mentioned on the Toss blog, on tossnationmedia.com. They came in with a very good game plan. They came in with a game plan that a lot of teams want to deploy when you play against a potent offense, especially one that's led by Aaron Rodgers. You want to come in, you want to have clock-eating drives, run the football, make some short passes, maybe even take a shot or two down the field just to loosen that defense up and keep them honest. But you want clock-killing drives, and you want to go down and score touchdowns every single time. Credit the Bears, they put together some decent drives. They just could not finish them. They converted a lot of fourth downs. But when it came down to it, they only visited the end zone one time. That Packers defense kept them up out of the end zone the rest of the game after that David Montgomery rushing touchdown in the first quarter. That was it. That was the only time they hit pay dirt. They wanted to come in, have clock-killing drives, score touchdowns every single time, keep that Aaron Rodgers-led offense on the sideline as long as they possibly could to shorten that game, give the Packers fewer possessions, and hopefully by that time you played some tough defense to possibly get the ball back Make them go 3 and out. Maybe force a turnover. Give the ball back to your offense. Go on another clock-killing drive and score a touchdown. Shorten that game up. It was a very good game plan that, for the most part, that at times they were pretty good at executing. They just couldn't finish drives with touchdowns. You can't kick field goals and think you're going to beat an Aaron Rodgers-led offense, especially this one, the way it's been humming all season long. Good game plan, but the Packers eventually dominated. It was 22 to 13, or 21-13 at the half. It was still a very, very close game. At one point in the third quarter, the Bears kicked a field goal, made it 21-16. At that point, you're thinking, uh-oh. Here we go with this craziness at Soldier Field with a lot of stuff on the line. Number 1 seed. I mean, the Packers could have easily gone from the number 1 seed to the number 3 seed. Very easily. But they didn't. Or excuse me, the number 2 seed, because there's no way they would get the number 3 seed because they beat the Saints. But I digress. If it was a 3-way tie, if all 3 of those teams would end up 12-4, Seahawks would have got the number 1 seed. But it didn't happen. But you're thinking, okay, 21-16. Oh boy, here we go. Here we go with this craziness. Fourth quarter came and the Packers decided to put the foot on the gas and close this game out. 14-0 in that fourth quarter, that deciding fourth quarter. And that put the ball game away. You ran the ball effectively. You passed the ball effectively. The defense got a couple of turnovers. Created a lot of pressure. Snacks Harrison, first game with the Packers, he paid dividends, just eating up tackles so other guys can get around and put pressure on the quarterback and hit the running back in the backfield for the most part, even though there's some missed tackles, but that's something you need to clean up. The defense showed that they're ready for a run. They ended up in the top 10, believe it or not. The run defense had been improved, much improved, maybe over the last 6 weeks of the season. Seems as if when the guys started getting healthy and the guys started getting into a groove, had started making some defensive adjustments, which Matt LaFleur said after the game, he believes that the cornerbacks can play up a little bit more on wide receivers and prevent those third down conversions, fourth down conversions. I agree with him. There's a play where I believe it was a third down and Mitchell Trubisky had an easy slant route completion to Allen Robinson, the last guy you want to play off of. Kevin King was probably like 8 to 10 yards off of him. Kevin King, he excels in bump and run. His length, his height, he excels at bump and run. You want him playing up on him and don't give him a chance to breathe. But I digress. Despite those few things that could be adjusted that Matt LaFleur put out into the lexicon, speaking to his defensive coordinator, but not directly, but speaking to him anyway. The defense did show that they're ready for a run. This offense showed that they're ready for a run because every single possession that they scored touchdowns. They maximized those possessions that they got. In the Tennessee game the week prior, they showed that they can run the football in inclement weather. Down the stretch, playoff time, you want to be able to run the football and play defense. Be able to capitalize on any mistake. Not give those other teams many possessions to come back and beat you. Packers over the last couple of weeks have shown they're ready for that. A record-breaking offense, a defense that's becoming more and more solid each and every single week. they can make a run. They can absolutely make a run. But we will have to wait for them to make that run because they have a first round bye, which means we won't be seeing them until the divisional round of the playoffs, along with the Kansas City Chiefs. So who will we be seeing? Well, to answer that question, we got to run the toss sweep. Toss Sweep, brought to you by the good folks over at Toss Nation Media. TossNationMedia.com, your home for the Toss brand of sports. Truthful, opinionated, passionate sports. It's what you deserve. Wildcard Weekend, oh man, the juices just get pumping. It's playoff season, but it's not just any Wildcard Weekend. No. Not just any Wildcard Weekend. It's Super Wildcard Weekend. I already said on the Facebook page, the Toss Facebook page, that's facebook.com/T on Sports Show, that's TON Sports Show, that the NFL cannot be calling everything super. Can't be calling everything super. That's something that needs to be reserved for the Super Bowl. It's of great importance. And it's not to say that the wild card round is not of great importance, but that's the Super Bowl. You know, that's like the ultimate. You need to save that word super for that. If anything, you could call this Wildcard Weekend XL. Because we're not used to having 6 wild card ball games. It's usually 4, because usually 6 teams from each conference make the playoffs. 2 teams from each conference typically get a first round bye. Well, in this COVID world, decided to make it a little bit different. Trying to get much more revenue. Saturday and Sunday. Saturday, the games begin. Who do we got on Saturday? As I mentioned before, the Packers and the Chiefs are on the first round bye. We'll see them in the divisional round. The Saturday games in the AFC, we have the 2 seed Buffalo Bills versus the 7 seed Indianapolis Colts. This one is very, very intriguing. You got an old gunslinger in Phillip Rivers. You got a guy who's been there, done that, and T.Y. Hilton. He's been through playoff battles before. You got a young guy, a young back who's hungry and went for over 250 on Sunday. Got over 1,000 yards rushing on the season. And Jonathan Taylor from Wisconsin, the Wisconsin Badgers. He a Badger. Frank Wright finally putting the ball in the hands of that young dynamic back who can catch it out the backfield, who can run with speed and power. He's done it all his career. And with the Badgers, showing that he could do it on the NFL level, all he needed was just opportunity. And I feel that Frank Reich was really playing around with giving him the football. Yeah, you gotta let him go. You gotta let him carry the mail. That's your bell cow. Now stop playing around with Nyheim Hines. You know, Nyheim Hines, he can catch it out the backfield. You can make some packages for him. You're a very good offensive mind. But when it comes to carrying that mail, when it comes to toting that rock, you give it to Jonathan Taylor. And when they did that, you saw a difference in their offense. Take a little bit of pressure off of Phillip Rivers. Makes them much more difficult to defend. With the Buffalo Bills, you got a certified MVP candidate in Josh Allen at quarterback. Stephon Diggs led the NFL in receiving yardage. Dynamic wide receiver. They're automatic points. I mean, they're pretty much an automatic 30. And they're playing at home. Now, typically home field advantage used to mean a lot more when you have fans in the stands or a lot more fans in the stands, because some of these teams will, probably have fans in the stands. or some of these teams have fans in their stands. But does it really mean a whole lot? Can Indianapolis go in and knock off the Bills? It's going to come down to defenses. Sean McDermott, head coach of the Buffalo Bills, he's a defensive mind. They went to the playoffs last year. It didn't turn out the way that they thought it would against the Texans. But they made it back, won their division for the first time in 25 years. Can he get that defense to play hard against this offense of Indianapolis? Or can Indianapolis come in and keep Josh Allen and crew on the sideline for as long as possible by running that rock with Jonathan Taylor? Dinking and dunking with Nyheim Hines, taking your deep shots with T.Y., Michael Pittman, Pascal, all those guys. I got to go with the Bills on this one. I have to go with the Bills on this one. They've been playing well all season. It's a 2 seed that doesn't get a bye week, so they're just going to keep going. They're at home. But I think it's going to be a little bit closer than most people think. Colts have a pretty decent defense. So they're going to make that a little bit closer than most people think. But I think eventually the Bills win that ball game. In the NFC, and we're on Saturday games, we have the 3 seed Seattle Seahawks versus the 6 seed LA Rams. The defense will give the Rams a shot. Aaron Donald and company, Jalen Ramsey, they'll give LA a shot. But if you're going to be without Jared Goff and you're going to be without Cooper Kupp because he's got COVID, I find it very, very difficult for the Rams to be able to go into Seattle and win that ball game. I find that very, 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 very difficult for them to do. Russell Wilson, Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf. I mean, that offense alone, it's going to give them a shot. The defense for the Seahawks have been playing a little bit better. They'll probably be without Jamal Adams, their big-time safety. But it's at Seattle. The Rams are without Jared Goff. I got to go Seattle with that one. I got to go to Seahawks to win that ball game. You're at home. You have your quarterback. I got to go with Seattle on that one. Final Saturday game, we have the Washington football team. That's right. They won the NFC least at 7-9. At least it wasn't 6-10. I give them that much. But the Washington football team, the 4 seed versus the 5 seed Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Tom Brady in the playoffs yet again, just a different conference and a different team. I think this one might be a little bit more close than most people think. Now, Tampa has to go to Washington because Washington won their division, so they earned that home game. Will they have Mike Evans? Will they not? Will they be able to run the football against this? And let's be clear, this Washington football team defense has been extremely tough. They have been tough. They have kept this team in games. They're going to be tough. I think they're going to be able to get some pressure on Tom Brady. And when you pressure him and make him feel really uncomfortable in that pocket, he makes some throws that you could take advantage of. He gets a little bit happy-footed back there and trigger happy and tries to get rid of the ball, and you can force him into some mistakes. But, it's Bruce Arians with Tom Brady, Chris Godwin, and Rob Gronkowski, and Rojo, and they've got some pretty decent linebackers, pretty fast, even though their defense has kind of been up and down. I got to give this game to the Buccaneers. I got to give it to the Bucs. Now, that's not to say, and I think it's going to be a close one. The Washington football team has gone and they've beaten some really good teams. You talk about the Steelers, who nobody saw. They knocked them from the ranks of the unbeaten. They can beat Tom Brady and the Buccaneers, but I don't know. I just get a feeling, it's Tom Brady, it's the playoffs. You look at the weaponry. I just, it's going to be tough. I don't think they're going to be out there and be an automatic 30, especially against this football team defense. But I got to give that slight edge to the Bucks. I got to go with the Bucks on this one. Sunday games in the AFC. The Tennessee Titans, the 4 seed, versus the 5 seed. Baltimore Ravens, a playoff rematch from last season when the Titans knocked the Ravens out of the playoffs. You know what Baltimore brings to the table? They bring a good defense. They bring last season's NFL MVP in Lamar Jackson, who had another 1,000-yard rushing season. They bring a very good running game. Passing game has started to percolate a little bit over the last 4 weeks. Hollywood Brown, Mark Andrews, Dez Bryant. He's been through some playoff battles. Tennessee Titans with King Henry, Derrick Henry, 2,000-yard season, another rushing title. Just an amazing season for him. Ryan Tannehill still being able to sling the ball all over the yard to the likes of A.J. Brown and Corey Davis and Jonnu Smith, and just a lot of weaponry he's got, and he's been playing very well. He's been making plays with his legs as well. It's going to come down to the defenses in this one. What defense is going to make plays? Because you know what Tennessee wants to do. They want to give the rock to Derrick Henry 30 times. They want Ryan Tannehill to throw it possibly 20 times and make them count. It's going to come down to what defense is able to force a turnover. And will that team be able to capitalize on that turnover? This game's going to be a lot closer than I think most people think. Now I'm going to give the edge to the Titans. I'll give that edge to the Titans. The other AFC game and the final AFC game of Super Wildcard Weekend, or what I'm calling Wildcard Weekend XL, the number 3 Pittsburgh Steelers, 3 seed, against the 6 seed Cleveland Browns. It is an interdivisional matchup. Now, in the playoffs, when you're facing a team in your own division, it is always tough. In the regular season, when you're facing a team in your own division, it's tough because they know you. They have years of experience of playing against you 2 times a year. Things get a little bit crazy when you're facing a divisional opponent. This one's an absolute toss-up for me. Now, it becomes a little bit more clear because now the Browns are yet again in a COVID outbreak. They're in a COVID outbreak. You're talking about their head coach, Kevin Stefanski, who is a Coach of the Year candidate, is going to be out because he tested positive for COVID. You have other coaches who are going to be out because they tested positive for COVID. You have more players going out because they're either been in close contact or have tested positive for COVID. So you're going to be missing your head coach, some of your assistant coaches, and some of your players. That's going to make things extremely difficult, especially when you're going into a one-and-done situation. You're on the road. You're at Pittsburgh, who seem to, I think, kind of find it. Ben Roethlisberger, 2-time world champion. I mean, it's an interdivisional matchup. I'm going to give the edge to the Steelers because their defense is much better than Cleveland's. I have to give them that edge. And like I said, it's going to be closer than most people think because when you're facing a division opponent, crazy things happen. But I'll give that one to the Steelers. And then the final NFC game of Wildcard Weekend, we have the 2 seed New Orleans Saints versus the 7 seed Chicago Bears. I would like to sit here and just rag on the Bears and say they don't stand a chance. This is just, why are we even talking about it? But it's the playoffs. It's the playoffs, and anything can happen. They have been playing a lot better offensively until they ran to the Green Bay Packers in the final week of the season. The defense still poses a tough challenge. Let's be clear about that. But you're talking about the Saints in the dome. Yeah, they don't have quite the crowd that they typically have in the dome. Talk about Drew Brees, world champion himself. Sean Payton, he's been through the playoff battles with them. I have to give that one to the Saints. I just, the weaponry they have, even though they will be without Alvin Kamara because he also has COVID. That whole situation is up in the air with him. This COVID outbreak is still a problem. It's still a problem. But I still think they have the weaponry to go out there and win that ball game. Now, we thought the same thing last season, and somehow they got beat. But I don't think they'll go down to the Chicago Bears. But again, it's playoff time. Anything can happen. But I will give that game to the Saints. So to recap, my winners of Super Wildcard Weekend, or what we're calling here on Toss, Wildcard Weekend XL. In Saturday's games, I have the Bills over the Colts. I have the Seahawks over the Rams. And I have the Buccaneers over the football team. And on Sunday's games, I have the Titans over the Ravens, the Steelers over the Browns, and the Saints over the Bears. Y'all, it is NFL playoff time. It's NFL playoff time. If your juice is not flowing, if you're not pumped up, what is wrong with you, man? It's postseason football. You get 6 games instead of 4 of playoff football this weekend. Enjoy it. The road to the Super Bowl truly begins. I'm ready for it. Well, y'all, that'll do it for me. That was episode 64 of Toss Tristain on Sports Show. Y'all know where to find me on social media. At the20double on Instagram and Twitter. That's at the number 2 and the word number 2, the number 2, the number 0 and the word double. Almost got that wrong, y'all. Facebook.com/T on Sports Show. That's TON Sports Show. Your Toss Facebook page there. Cover a lot of things there that we don't get a chance to cover on the show. And of course, TossNationMedia.com. Your home for the Toss brand of sports. Truthful, opinionated, passionate sports. It's what you deserve. But as I said before, it's time for me to get on up out of here. This is T-Squared, Tristan Thomas, reminding all of you to keep it moving forward. Always forward. Forward always. Until next week. So long from Toss.